Martin is president and CEO of Steel Sports. We're going to tell you about Steel Sports in a bit, but he has 21 years of work experience in the youth sports industry. Tell you what, Martin, before you sit down, why don't you go sit over there and then we'll bring these chairs in, because first we're going to begin with this little slideshow here at the beginning. He came to the United States from England at 18 years old. He worked as a soccer camp counselor. Founded Jersey United Soccer in 2004. We're going to get into all this. Also, Steel Sports is a national youth sports organization, soccer, baseball, and softball. You had anything else?
Soon.
Soon, I thought so. Which will impact over 100,000 athletes each year. 100,000 athletes each year. They have also been tremendous partners with Rowan University. We met probably about 2 years ago, I think, on LinkedIn. That's when we connected. And now we had last summer 9 students that interned for Steel Sports. We're in the process of gathering more. Anybody here interned for Steel Sports last year? Anybody here last year? Who's applied for this year? Okay, Jen in the back, right here. Okay, Nick did. Okay, Jess, you did. Okay, so handful here have applied. So let me tell you just a little bit before we get into everything. I want to right off the bat talk about the internships and the opportunities that are available. Martin, you haven't seen this, so I'm going to move to the side. Again, what is Steel Sports? Here's an opportunity for you to learn about it. It's a social impact business. Again, you're still in 10 different regions. That's still the case, okay? Coast to coast, right? Coast to coast.
Yep.
Based here in Bridgewater, New Jersey,
Yep.
which is technically central New Jersey, if there is such a thing.
Just south of 78. So.
There you go. Their mission is to inspire youth to reach their potential on and off the field by developing them as athletes and people through Steel Sports coaching system the Lasorda way. Tommy Lasorda, how many of you are familiar with Tommy Lasorda? How did Tommy Lasorda become the Lasorda way of your coaching system?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting story. So Steel Sports was founded in 2011 by a gentleman called Warren Lichtenstein, who's the executive chairman of Steel Partners, which is a diversified holding company that's been around for about 30 years. And he moved to California with his 7-year-old son, single dad, and in order to kind of embed himself into the community, he started to get involved in sports. Now, Warren was not a sports fan, didn't play sports as a kid, didn't follow sports, professionally, but was like, I don't know anything about sports, but I'll get involved. I'll be an assistant coach to the little league team my son's playing on, and I'll get involved. So he started coaching his son's team, well, not coaching it, but being a part of the coaching staff for his son's team. And through a board member at Steel Partners, he was having dinner on a Friday night, and the board member said, can Uncle Tommy come to the dinner? And Warren was like, yeah, I don't know who Uncle Tommy is. Got introduced, turns out it was Tommy Lasorda in Southern California, and Warren didn't even know who Tommy Lasorda was at that point. He never heard of him at all, but got talking to him, found him like a fascinating character. Told Tommy that, yeah, I'm going to be at my son's Little League game in the morning, Saturday morning. Tommy turns up at the Little League field. So he's in the dugout with Warren, and little kid goes up to hit, and Warren says he's not had a hit all year, all season. He's not getting close to the ball. So Tommy, as Tommy and only Tommy can in Southern California, walks on the field, stops the game, bends down, talks to this kid at home plate, looks at Warren, winks, walks back to the dugout. Next swing, kid gets his first hit of the season. So Warren was like, maybe there is something to this coaching and talking to people and developing relationships. So they started to talk, and Warren became aware that his son and other kids would have a positive or a negative experience on the field, depending on what the coach did. So he wanted to try and develop a system that only taught ways to influence kids positively. And the Search Institute says about 20% of kids in this country don't have a positive adult role model in their life. So how can coaches fill that void? So Tommy kind of said to him, well, look, you've got the resource, got the means, do something about it. So he founded Steel Sports in 2011 in an office in Dodger Stadium. And Tommy was very influential in developing the coaching system, which is the way we train coaches. It's the how to coach. We don't talk about X's and O's, but it's the communication, non-verbal communication, verbal communication, and along with a lot of other parts of our framework that do that. So and actually Warren and Tommy became best friends. Warren gave the eulogy at Dodger Stadium at Tommy's funeral last year, and Tommy used to introduce himself as Warren's best friend. So they became very close, traveled all over the world with Tommy, giving speeches to corporations and business leaders, and that's how Tommy kind of became part of it. Now, anybody that's seen Tommy on TV, and you know, we've seen more, Neil, knew he was a really fiery character. Like, he would scream, yell in interviews and all sorts. But one dinner that I happened to be at a few years ago, when Tommy was starting to get real old, he came through the doors at this restaurant in Long Island, and he was being helped by Dusty Baker, Bobby Valentine, and Eric Karros. And he hadn't coached them for 30 plus years. Now, through that dinner, they provided everything that he needed. You know, he would whisper to Bobby, Bobby would run off, Bobby Valentine, celebrity in his own right, would run off, get him ice cream. But the relationships that he cultivated over the time he coached them lasted until 30 years later, where they were wanting to help him and look after him because that's how they saw him as a father figure. And that's what Tommy was very good at. We have a guy called Jerry Royster on our advisory board who played for Tommy. He's in Southern California, and he got traded for Dusty Baker. And yet every time he went back to Southern California, even though Tommy had traded him to the Braves, Tommy would check in on how's your family, you know everything about his family and his kids, and that's how he developed those relationships. So that's kind of what we teach through our Steel Sports coaching system, and develop that so that kids can have that lasting lifetime positive relationship with their coach.
And Warren believes so much in Tommy Lasorda that he gave a very wealthy donation, a very rich donation, I won't even say the number, to the University of Pennsylvania to name the baseball field at the University of Pennsylvania after Tommy Lasorda.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Okay. So again, I think it's important that if you had a chance to read it, but again, Steel Sports in baseball, softball, and also in soccer. That's now you know a little bit about the history of Steel Sports, and for those of you that have applied for those positions in internships, here for all of you, this is what is available in this company that has been so good to our Rowan students. Internship opportunities include sports management, social impact, brand and communications, marketing, sales, HR, finance, social media, events. You mentioned the coaching part. I think we actually had a student that actually got involved in coaching. We had a student last summer that lived in kind of mid-central Jersey. I know that's not really a term. Central Jersey, drove all the way to Long Island to work at, it's not Baseball Heaven now, it's now Lasorda Legacy Park. But did that every day because he loved baseball and had a chance to work in the baseball environment. They have a whole baseball complex on Long Island. So a lot of opportunities. So look here, marketing, events, I'll leave this up there. You look at what really stands out to you, and we'll talk about how you can apply for these positions for this summer and beyond. Okay, there's video opportunities. Did you hire Brian? You hired Brian. How do you say Brian's last name? Say. Okay, S-E-A-Y. I was never sure if it's Say. Brian Say just graduated, hired full-time by Steel Sports. Kirsten Kusianis, another one, worked as an intern last summer, hired full-time by Steel Sports. Graphic design, social impact, public relations, finance, executive assistant to somebody like Martin or some other administrator, communications. You see all this that's available? Any aspect that you want to get involved in, this is not for on-air people. We have plenty of opportunities for on-air people. But if you want to get involved in PR, marketing, any kind of communication, getting into production, it's all right there. And these people have been phenomenal partners to us at Rowan University. So I'm gonna put that all. I'll put these on the Pizza with the Pros group meet chat so that you all have them and you can see what's there and what you might be interested in. And that's the person you contact. Her name is Leslie Teal. She's phenomenal. She lives in Kansas, by the way. I deal with her all the time. I talk to her on the phone all the time. She's great. You have her email. Again, I'll post all this on the group meet chat. You can take a picture of it now if you want. But I would encourage you to reach out. Say, hey, I'm really interested in a marketing opportunity, a marketing internship. You write a nice email to her, you send your resume, and let's see what happens. Okay? Our students all did really well last summer.
Yep.
All did really well. I heard really good things from variety of people.
I will add that as part of the internship program, so Steel Sports is one of 15 business units of Steel Partners, who I mentioned was Lauren founded. Steel Partners is a publicly traded company that is very diversified, owns a bank, manufacturing, has plants all over the world, about 8,000 employees. But the students that become part of Steel Sports internship program become part of a larger Steel Partners internship program, so the opportunities to network and connect. And Warren every year does a Q&A with all the interns, and they can ask him any question on internship day. So
that was one of the cool things our interns said when they had an opportunity to. I guess it was on Zoom.
Yeah,
right?
it was on Teams. I think the last, I forget who did it, but one of the Rowan students, I think the Steel Sports interns, asked the last question, which was, what's his involvement in Steel Sports on a day-to-day basis? And his response was, Steel Sports is my baby. So you know how highly he thinks
there
of
you go.
Steel
I like
Sports,
that.
so.
All right, so I wanted to get that off the top so that you all understand that when I hear from students, never know where to go internship-wise, hey, you hear anything this summer? I'm giving you a perfect opportunity right here. I'm not saying you're getting the internship. You got to get it. She didn't take everybody that I suggested for her to consider last year, but she took 9 of them. That's pretty good. Okay? If you're interested, here's an opportunity, and here's the man right here that is overseeing Steel Sports. Okay? All right. Let's get into, let's put our chairs in here. We're going to get into a little bit about our Q&A with students. I'm going to go pull that out there. Get out of here. And we should get there. All right. So, Martin, just a little bit about your background, too. Just tell everybody about your background.
Sure.
From coming over here to the States and what prompted you to come here to the States.
So I grew up with sports. I played sports my entire life. Growing up in England, I played soccer, football, obviously as we call it, cricket, tennis, golf, rugby. So I grew up. Both my parents were phys ed teachers originally, so I kind of grew up in the family of into sports. In England, we kind of you finish high school at 16, and then you go on to do kind of 2 more years as you specialize a little bit more, and then you finish 18 and go to college. And at 18, I decided I was going to take a year out. My dad, who had been a scout and a coach at the academy at Liverpool Football Club, had friends that had gone over and coached in the US, and this is back in kind of 2000, 2001, and coached at camps and that. So I was like, well, I'm going to take a year out. I'll go and I'll work some camps. I'll go and see the world. Love traveling. I was lucky enough. My mother was head of the travel at her high school, so she used to take groups all around the world, and I got to go on them. So I love travel. I was like, yeah, I'll go. I'll give it a go. I'll see what happens. And so I went, got a position with a company in Virginia, camp counselor. I think it was making like $60 a week or something. It was an 8-week contract. My parents were like, well, 8 weeks is not really going to cut it if you're going to take a year out. What are you doing for the rest of the time, because you're not just hanging around the house. So I took, before I left, I found another position that kind of once that first 8 weeks finished, I extended till like November, working in coaching in travel and rec clubs and schools and stuff for another organization, which was in New Jersey, which what got me from New Jersey. So I started with a company that was based in Virginia. Loved that time there. I got to travel around different communities, stay in with different people. They would house you. Someone on the camp would house you, and I got to stay with one of in Brooklyn, one of John Gotti's attorneys, which was interesting. Also got to stay with the producer for Blair Witch 2 and American History X, and also President Clinton's Marine One helicopter pilot in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So stayed with some really interesting people. Loved the US. Had a contract then when I came up to New Jersey. I got the train from DC up to Newark and across to Morristown, and worked there till November, which is when my kind of visa ran out, and decided I was going to come back the following year in 2002 and work again for like February to November because I loved it. So came back, did it again, and during that year, I was like 19, I think. I started to have conversations with the people, and I started to think, I feel like I could do this differently a little bit. So I kind of, taking more Tommy's advice of kind of shut up and do something about it yourself. I started my own company in 2004. A complete failure first off. Had a couple of partners that were just didn't work. So shut that up. started another one. It was called, I think, Nobles Soccer Academy. Awful name and was terrible, failed completely. And then started Jersey United Soccer in kind of early 2004. We just, I was working for the first year, coaching in the evening, doing all the coaching myself. I was doing all the admin, all the marketing. At that time, there was no social media and stuff. It was just email blasts and were the biggest thing. And started to kind of get some clients to coach and that. And then during the day, I would do whatever I could to get some money in my pocket. So $10 an hour, I cleaned out a house that caught fire and they were getting rid of stuff, and did that during the day just to pay the bills, and coached and started to build up more and more clubs. And then eventually we had enough work where we started to bring other coaches over. So we brought some other coaches over from England, and we'd house them and we'd give them transport. And then around 2005, 2006, I kind of saw in the youth soccer industry that it was certainly becoming more club-based, where it used to be, work for the travel organization of a town, the town would hire you, or rec programs, the town would hire you. So we started our own club as a non-profit organization, a 501c3 called Jersey United Soccer Club. And we had that all the way until about 2018. And I'd been approached. Steel Sports had acquired UK Elite. Many of you have heard of UK Elite before. That they had acquired UK Elite in 2014. They used to be based in Morristown, and I'd known the owners, and that's where we did most of our work and where our club played out of. So I got to talking with them, and they said, we were bought by Steel, and this club company. I'd never heard of Steel at the time, and 2018 they acquired my company, Jersey United Soccer. I became so Steel's club is called Steel United, and I became the director of operations for all of the Steel United, which was a real ambition of mine. I really wanted Jersey United to be that, where we would have a Jersey United and a Pennsylvania United, and we'd have all these clubs around the country, and I just wasn't able to get to that point, so this was a good stepping stone for me. And I was the director of operations for Steel United. We had 7 clubs at the time, and then once the kind of the pandemic hit, the person who was running all of soccer was let go, and Warren had asked me to be the interim president of soccer. And I started talking to him about how I would maybe structure Steel Sports differently. I didn't think we should go down the sports route. We should do more product-based. So our products are teams, programming, and experiences, kind of our tournaments and events. And I convinced him that we needed to standardize that. So if you play on a Steel Sports team, no matter what sport it is, it feels like a Steel Sports team. And if you go to a baseball tournament or a soccer tournament, no matter where it is, it feels like a Steel Sports event. So after kind of convincing him and showing my plan, he offered me the position of president and CEO of Steel Sports. It was about June of 2020, so I'm a little more than 18 months in, and we've made huge changes, but good ones, and we're growing pretty rapidly right now. So.
And you had to deal with a pandemic.
Yeah, the pandemic was very interesting. We were completely shut down for about 3 months, March to June, on furlough. We furloughed our entire staff at that time, unfortunately, but by August 3rd, every one of our staff members were back on. They all got their back pay in December from that time as well, as a bonus. And Warren's been very supportive of Steel Sports. As he said, it's his baby, and he really he's actually taken in the last. So since I've taken over here at Steel Sports, he's now instituted the Steel Partners corporate goal is to help kids thrive through Steel Sports. So we are actually training the employees of our sister organizations, shop floor managers, factory workers, executives, administrators, etc., in the Steel Sports coaching system. And if they're a certified Steel coach, which means they take our courses, they pass our testing, and they coach in their local community wherever they are, Steel Partners through Steel Sports will sponsor a team up to $500 a season for those kids to get whatever they need. And that's Warren is making that a forefront of Steel Partners' mission. It's not about stakeholder value anymore. It's about a bigger purpose, and that's the shared purpose of all. And it's the one thing he realized, when he used to go around to all these different companies, he'd be in a factory floor, he'd be out, in an office, he'd be in, China, he'd be in Ireland, he'd be in the US, he'd be in Mexico. And the one thing he constantly got asked all the time by employees was, what's this Steel Sports? So sports became this big unifier against a very diverse organization. And it was a sense that sports can, whether they play sports, whether they have kids that play sports, whether they're fan of sports, sports can be a big unifier. So he started to think about how we can, as an organization, we can make that the mission of the entire corporation, not just Steel Sports. And that's what we've been doing. We've now trained about 800 Steel Partners employees in the last 12 months through our system. And we're starting now. We've just, I think last week, gave our first sponsorships to these individuals that are coaching in their local community, which they can use for whatever that team needs.
So one of the things I think is unique about having Martin here is that we generally have talked about professional sports. We've talked about boutique marketing firms, PR firms. Here's a first opportunity I think we've had with Pizza of the Pros in the 3 years I've been doing it, where you have youth sports, where you're able to dive in and ask questions about youth sports. Frankly, many of you, this is the best way you probably can get into the business, is through youth sports, right? And sometimes you're going to find, well, I don't want to go to professional sports or collegiate sports. I like youth sports. I want to stay there, and you stay in that space. So, questions for Martin right here.
So, what are your thoughts on the heading rule for youth soccer now?
My thoughts on heading rule. What's your name?
I like it.
What's your name?
Michael,
nice to meet you. I'll just add to your point. Youth sports is a $19 billion a year industry. It's not a small industry anymore. Mm-hmm. My thoughts on, it's been a long time since I coached now. I've been stuck in an office for a long time. I would say I can only defer to the experts and the scientists that say that it's obviously trying to protect kids. I certainly did it when I played as a young kid. My parents did, my dad did. But I think the best thing to do is to adhere to the experts and the people that certainly know better than me. I'm not a brain surgeon or anything like that. So I think if they're telling me, it's the same thing I say when you have to trust the experts, right? So if I take my car to the shop, I got to trust the mechanic that he's going to fix it for me because I can't do it. So I got to trust the experts saying if they say that heading the ball at a young age is detrimental, I think it's something that we should follow. My opinion doesn't really matter because I can't back it up with facts or data. So.
Next question for Martin. Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, Martin. My name is Sean Kenny. I was wondering, what would it take to coach in Steel Sports?
Sure, nice to meet you. Well, a couple of things. We do look for some experience of youth sports, whether that's coaching, whether that's playing. But we train coaches. That's one of the things we do. So we give you the tools as an individual to go and coach. Now, depending on your experience, your playing experience, your education in coaching, might depend on the level that you can coach at. But we run many programs for 4, 5, 6-year-olds for coaches that might not have done much coaching, maybe didn't play a whole lot, but we'll give you the tools as an individual to through our coaching system, which is the how to coach. And we give you handbooks, those that work on our summer staff. We do run summer camps, obviously, all when they get a summer handbook, which kind of takes them through. Here's the games, here's the practices. So we give you a lot of tools. So a little bit of experience is possible, but it doesn't mean that we won't work with people that haven't coached before or haven't even played. If they're energetic, enthusiastic, good communicators, like working with kids, like being outside and running, then we will give you the tools needed to do a good job.
And this is in baseball, softball, and soccer.
Yep.
All three. Okay.
Yep. And we are currently in Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Texas, Colorado, California, and Washington State.
Beautiful. Good, Lee.
How you doing, Mr. Brown? My name is Lee. So you came here from England, and you talked about how you started a couple different of these youth sports startups, and they weren't successful at first. What can you say in terms of how you were able to stay motivated and not give up?
At that time?
Yeah.
I needed a roof over my head, so I needed to get some money from somewhere to pay the rent, right? So, I was always a pretty driven individual, so I think that was innately in me, but really I never was one that liked to fail. So, but I learned so much from those two failures. To be able to take it into the success that I've had since then. So, you look back and, at times maybe you don't think, well, that was, this is a mistake, I'm doing this. But when you look back, you're like, okay, well, if I'd done that a different way, it might have been differently. But I would say the big difference between the success I had at Jersey United and those two failures were the people that I worked with. And the people that you work with are so key. There just wasn't a good fit and a good culture fit with the people I started the first two businesses with, and I went from working with 5 people in the first one, which failed miserably, and then to 3 people, and then when I started Jersey United, it was just me and one other person, so that was probably the biggest difference. The biggest motivator was I had to eat, so I needed to work.
You had a question, Micah? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you speak to the difference in cultures when it comes to soccer in England versus America and how it's grown since you came?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, football in the UK is certainly, for want of a better term, almost like a religion to people. I'm a huge Liverpool fan, so we're having a pretty good season, so it's been good so far this year. But the passion that people have, I think honestly, I think the closest I've seen it in the US is probably at college sports, particularly the big college sports. I would say that's a closer than, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the MLB, whether it's even MLS. I think that that passion that those students have for the teams that they go and support is really kind of what people have in the UK. And you generally, it's changed a little bit in the last 10 years or so, but generally you're supporting the team where you grew up. I grew up just south of Liverpool. You're not, I was certainly not growing up a Chelsea fan living 4 hours from London. But I think one of the biggest things, and when I first came here, I remember watching the 2002 FIFA World Cup, which was in South Korea and Japan, and I remember watching a game at like 3:30 in the morning on some wavy Spanish channel that I could manage to stick a coat hanger in my TV and get that channel on. Whereas now it's everywhere, right? You can watch I can watch more Premier League games in the US than I could if I was in the UK. So there's definitely been a huge swell and I think that's come from the youth. We've got kids. I say kids. We have people now that started playing, in the 90s and the early 2000s that have had kids themselves. So they kind of have grown up with that passion. I think that's been the biggest thing, and that's what people have kind of been waiting for. It's that first generation of those players from the 90s, those youth players from the late 90s, early 2000s and onwards, having their kids now. They're a lot more educated. When I first started coaching, on camps, it must have been, you must be an awesome coach because you have an English accent, and I could have been the world's worst coach, and it wouldn't have mattered. They would have been thought I was great, and there were American coaches with American accents that were probably better coaches than me that didn't get the same kudos because they just didn't have the accent, right? So I think that's been a big change. Is now you're getting a lot of American coaches that grow up playing the game here have learnt and they're kind of passing that on, and I think that's started to develop a lot more passion for teams. But I remember also times I walked down the street, would never see a Premier League jersey on anyone. You walk down now and everybody's, whether I'd like to see more Liverpool jerseys, but there's a lot of Manchester United, Chelsea ones. But
how big would it be if Philadelphia were able to get, and I know they're going to announce in the next few months, opportunity to host the World Cup?
I think it would be huge, yeah, and I think that MetLife is on the short list for the final, which would be huge too. But I think having the World Cup here in 26 is going to be a real eye opener for a lot of people. I think there'll be a lot more passion to it than there was in '94. That was one England didn't make, so I can't speak to it as much. We didn't qualify for that one. But yeah, I think in 2026 you're going to see a huge groundswell of passion and support for soccer as a whole because of the World Cup. I think that'll certainly be helpful.
Softball fans, okay, a few softball, and baseball, okay. All right, so pretty much we're hitting all areas right here. So, by the way, did you meet your wife here?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so was the
second,
accent
both wives, yeah.
Oh, okay. The accent the difference?
I did all right with the accent.
All right, go ahead, Drew. You had a question.
Yeah, so adopting a unified, relationship-based work style that you guys did, How did that not only affect your relationship with Warren himself, but the other CEOs of the other branches of Steel Partners?
It's been good. I mean, to be completely honest, Steel Sports was seen by the other companies as kind of the lonely stepchild over in the corner that nobody really wanted to do anything about. We are not although we are a for-profit company, we are not driven by financial profit. We are judged on the impact we have, the number of kids we impact positively. So we were looked at. There are some organizations and Steel Partners that make $200 million a year. So when we are there, making $1 or so and impacting kids, they look at it a little bit differently. But Warren's passion to change that narrative and show that it's important, and he's also fired leadership teams of companies that don't portray the right culture, has also been a huge part. So that these organizations know, and I've started to build relationships with the other CEOs, which I think wasn't really done by predecessors of mine. So we've been able to really talk about how it can positively impact their company, because it's not just about it's sports and you're helping kids over here. We're informing them that it's building a culture for their own organization. We can be a company that supports their kids and their kids in their community. We can support their community, and they can be good neighbors in that community, and they can have a social impact in those communities. So it's not just about, and sports can be the driver of that. And that's what we're trying to do with all of the other organizations. So, but it's been led by Warren. Me and him have a very similar philosophy on that, so that's been good. We've had a great working relationship for the last 18 months, 2 years or so, and but that's what we're trying to do. We say Steel Sports is a social impact organization, and we are going to take that to our other sister companies and make sure that they are doing the right things in that space as well.
It's good to be aligned with the billionaire owner of the company.
It is, yes.
That's a smart move.
Yeah, I mean, where it's actually been really good is that when we've wanted to do something, we're able to go and get the experts, right? And if they're costly, we can go that way. For example, we wanted to run. Warren kind of came to us one day and said, "Are we improving the leadership and character of our athletes?" And we're like, "Yeah, we think so." Well, how are we doing it? Show me. And there was no data. So we said, well, we need to develop a program that we can then measure and we can look at and we can say that we are improving it or we're not. So it was like, okay, well, who can do that? So we did research and we said, there's a guy called Peter Mindell. Now, anybody heard of Pete Mindell? Probably not, because I hadn't heard of him either beforehand. But he is, and I always butcher his title, but he is the chair of character and leadership development at West Point. So he is in charge of the character development for the U.S. Army, which, as you can imagine, is certainly a place where they value that very, very highly. And we were able to work with Pete because of the resource, because of the connections. Peter used to work for Angela Duckworth at UPenn and Character Lab. So Warren, very good friends with Angela. And through those connections and having someone, we were able to bring Peter in and help develop a program where we can, after the first year, we did a pilot program with just 200 of our athletes. We actually had better results in our program than the first year cadets at West Point. And Peter was very, very surprised at that. And he actually put it down to the fact that those cadets are hearing that day in and day out. Our program was designed to become part of what we already do within our sports coaching. So having someone like Warren allows us to go and find the right people to then deliver what we want for our kids to make them better.
All right, who's up next? Ready?
What are some of the big differences in youth sports, like when you're playing in England, than to coming here and coaching here?
I have to be careful on the answer of this one. I will say the biggest difference is the pay-to-play model. In the UK, you play. You don't have to pay your part, but it's very rec-based. Even if you start making it as a soccer player, you join an academy, you're playing for free. And if you're not, you're paying a couple of pounds a week to play. That's a difference in this country, which we are an organization that is pay to play. But what we try and do is make sure that we are giving that social impact to our athletes and to our families and to the communities. And as I said, we are not technically a for-profit company, but I like to call us a not-for-profit, for-profit company. But that's certainly the difference. But I think it goes along with all the other things that are needed for athletes to play and for kids to play. When I grew up, I would find a field, we'd put some sweatshirts down as goals, and we would play, right? And me and my friends would play, and we'd go out there, and I'd ride my bike over to my friends on a Saturday morning. I'd be out there for 10 hours, and then I'd ride home in the evening, and we would have just played soccer all day, or different sports. The fact here that you have to, have permits, you have to have fields. If you turf fields are expensive, right? Someone's going to pay. So unfortunately, that kind of gets passed all the way back down to athletes. But that's certainly, I think, one of the bigger differences that I've noticed, growing up in the UK. But I've actually spent now more than half my life. I came to the US in 2001. I left when I was 18. So I've spent more than half my life in the US. I think that's one of the biggest differences. But I also can't tell you what it's like there now. I can only tell you what it was like, when I was a kid, X number of years ago. So it could be a little bit more like that now in the UK. But that was one of the biggest eye openers to me. For parents to fork out. And then I think the biggest thing is the amounts that parents are willing to pay for their kid. And I think there are a lot of organizations that maybe aren't so truthful to parents and sell them something that is not necessarily what they need or what they actually get. That's something that we make sure at Steel Sports will lay out. If you are joining our program and this is the cost to it, this is what you should expect, and this is the service that you should expect. And if you don't, then we'll make that right. But so I think that's one of the biggest things that was eye-opening to me.
I think the pay to play here in the United States really kicked into gear about 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
I think that's when it really kicked into gear, and now it's.
Yeah, now it's not. I mean, there's been avenues and programs to try and stop it, but it's not going to get worse, I think.
Go ahead, Nick.
So going off that question, it was kind of the same thing, but how do you feel about parents kind of pushing their kids in sports by living like in their shadow?
Living vicariously.
Do you think that kids should just play the sport because they enjoy it?
Yeah, absolutely. Second part, yeah, kids should absolutely play. In fact, we've just launched our Xplore program, which is, we believe at Steel Sports that early specialization is not appropriate for young kids. You see that particularly in the baseball world, where there's more kids now than ever that have to have Tommy John surgery because of the early specialization. So we've just launched our program called Xplore, and it's a sports sampling program. We believe that between the ages of 4 and 10 to 12, you should be sampling multiple sports. You learn from multiple sports. I was a goalkeeper in soccer, and I played rugby, and I thoroughly believe things I did in rugby made me a better goalkeeper, and things I did in soccer made me a better rugby player, and all of that made me a better tennis player because my hand-eye coordination was better, and etc. So I definitely, we've just launched that program, started in January, where we're encouraging kids. Now, you can have a primary sport, there's nothing wrong with that, but you shouldn't have one sport only. And if you look, I think in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs this past year, out of the 8 quarterbacks, they played 24 sports in high school between them. So sports sampling and multi-sport does breed elite athletes, and there's nothing wrong with having a primary sport, but you shouldn't have an only sport. You should be doing other things. It will make you a better all-round athlete. What was your first part of your question, sir?
Kind of along the line of how do you feel about parents living in
Parents,
the shadow?
yes, thank you. Parents, yes. Sometimes the bane of my existence. I think parents sometimes are not educated enough in the youth sports world and what their clubs and organizations are trying to do for their kids. So I would encourage any parents. We actually have parent modules for our parents, and this coming up season it will be mandatory for their kid to be on the team, that they have to take it. It takes about 15 minutes, but it lays out our core values, it lays out what we're going to do, and what we expect from you. And Steve Jones, who's the senior VP of the Steel Sports coaching system, tells parents all around the country, the 5 words he tells them is, parents should be saying, "We love watching you play," and that's it. And that's what parents should do. You're always going to get parents that try and live vicariously through their kids, and there's nothing wrong with that if it's channeled the right way. But kids need space to be able to go and explore, and have fun. And that's the number one reason that kids do. The dropout rate of youth sports at 13 is so high. If you ask kids, it's not about winning or losing. It's about them having fun, and that's what they need to do. But if you ask parents, it's about winning. And that's where the disconnect happens between parents. And all we can do as good sports organizations is try and educate the parents on those things. Sometimes you feel it's a losing battle, but I definitely think we're making strides slowly with how to educate parents and teach them this is what your kid needs. And we're always going to lose kids because parents think, I need to go to this place because this is better, or they're going to win more here or win more there. And sometimes you're not going to reach them, but we try and reach as many as we can. And I think at Steel Sports, we do a pretty good job of informing our parents of what to expect. And at the end of the day, there's such a small percentage of kids that go on and play professional sports, even college sports. You want to make them better people. And ultimately, that sports is a great tool, a great platform to do that. You learn so many life lessons. And, one of the things that differentiates the Steel Sports coaching system is if you had Steve Jones up here, hands up here who believes sports can teach you life lessons. So if Steve Jones was sat here, he'd say you were all wrong, because he would say, sport can teach you life lessons, but only if the coach is trained to recognize those moments in practice and games and teach the kid. To be able to sit a kid down and say, when you picked up those water bottles at the end, you showed integrity. That's what that means. When you tackled that kid because they worked, they said something to your friend, that was teamwork. And those are the things that coaches have to do, and I think that's something that we need to educate parents more and more of, and that's something that we spend a lot of time and resources trying to do.
All right, next up, right here.
Just like in your opinion, what is your opinion on like MLS Next program and how, although it like sets up many players for like success, it also disaffectly affects like kids who can't afford that, have that talent to be able to play professionally.
I think that the MLS has not tapped into the market of communities that can't necessarily afford to play in that travel or elite club environment. So I think that they haven't done a great job with that. Right now, MLS Next, those ECNL programs are probably the only way you will go through and play at that elite level. But if you look at the trend for American professional soccer players, a lot of them at that age now are going to Europe. The US can compete with the rest of the world from 8 years old to 17, 18. Where they lose out is between that 18 and that 22 when those players here go to college and play, they're playing professionally in Europe. So that's really the difference. If you look at the US U15 teams, U16 teams, they can compete. When they get to U18, U19, U20, that's when they struggle, and that's that development age of those 4 years is a huge difference. Like if you want to play in the Premier League and you're not playing in the team by 22, you're not going to play in that club in the Premier League. But the MLS are taking players when they're 21, 22 out of college. So I think they lose a lot of development, and I think they need to look at that if they do want to be taken seriously as a league that competes with the rest of the world, and those players then want to go on and play in the national team and win and compete for World Cups.
Jess, you had a question?
I can also do baseball and softball questions too.
It's the accent.
Yeah,
it's
I
the
know,
accent.
right?
The accent. Go ahead, Jess.
My question is, how does the internship program help with transition from interning to the real world?
Well, I think an internship is only as good if you're giving real world experience, right? So I think if you're in an internship that doesn't make sense for what's in the real world, and you're constantly, well, this is how it's supposed to be done, this is theoretical, then I don't think you're going to get a lot out of an internship program. So when we have an internship program at Steel Sports, we put you out with the parents in the field with our coaches, working on projects that are going out to the public. So I think any internship program, if it can give you the opportunity for real world experiences, I think that will be helpful. I learned the things I know how by just doing them, and some of them I failed at, and some of them then I would work on better. So I kind of went through a life internship a lot of the time, and I think for an internship to be successful and transition to the real world, you have to be actually doing things in the real world, not just sitting in an office somewhere kind of theoretically thinking about certain things. I think you have to be out there in meeting with the public, talking to the public, talking with colleagues, completing projects that are actually not going to sit in a pile somewhere that someone's going to look at, but actually go out and help that organization that you're working with.
You, as I mentioned earlier, you took 3 of our students from last summer. Like, what is it that stands out to you when you decide, oh, we'd like to keep this person on board?
First and foremost for us, it's the culture that has to be a fit. We talk about our actions and behaviors of our culture, our 5 pillars of our culture at Steel Sport. So that has to be number one. I think, someone that's extremely hardworking is certainly up there. Number 2, I mean, working in the youth sports industry, whether you're a coach, whether you are doing social media, whether you're videoing, whether you're doing communications, it's not a 9 to 5, position. And I don't think that's true for most sports organizations, whether that's pros or not. You have to be able to be flexible, and you have to really have a passion for it. I think working for Steel Sports, if you have a passion for sports and a passion for helping kids to become better people, better athletes, then I think that along with culture and hard work will take you very, very far, because that's really what I've done in my life. I wasn't lucky enough to sit through a course by Neil. I had to work hard. I had a passion for sports. And I felt that I had the right, the values and that for the organization that I wanted to work for. So,
very nice. Right here.
I'm going to ask you a baseball question.
I'll do my best.
So, I know that in my hometown, youth baseball especially is seeing a little bit of drop off. Have you noticed youth baseball need drop off in participation?
Yes, youth baseball is definitely. Actually, I would say pre-pandemic, yes. Since the pandemic, it has increased across the country. If you actually look at the 2021 Aspen Project Play report for sports participation, it will show you there was an increase. Actually said the fastest growing youth sport is, anyone want to have a guess?
Lacrosse.
Remember, 2 things in the pandemic. 1 I wouldn't have got.
Golf.
Yeah. Ultimate Frisbee and cycling. Those were the 2.
Well, golf was a good answer, though.
Golf was a good
That
answer
was a
too.
good
Yes,
answer.
that would have made much sense as well with the pandemic.
Is lacrosse growing?
Lacrosse is growing. Youth sports as a whole is growing. There's certainly a lot more kids around than also. Rugby is also growing. Yes, we actually do some rugby in our Pennsylvania region. We work with a couple of organizations there. But yeah, baseball certainly pre-pandemic saw a drop off. We saw in 2021 not a lot of teams traveling. We have the park in Long Island, which we have 7 fields and an indoor center, and we run about 22 events a year. And there are Steel Sports events. We definitely saw a lot of local teams and repeated teams. This year already we are seeing I think about a 200% increase of out-of-town teams traveling, booking hotels already for the summer. So I think there was definitely a dip in pre-pandemic. During the pandemic. Pre-pandemic it was increasing slightly, and it's started on the rise again now. But now they've got the bargaining agreement done. I think that wouldn't have helped either if that went on and on. So.
Do you do baseball other than what you do on Long Island? Where else do you have facilities? Do you have other facilities like that or no?
We have a soccer facility in Virginia Beach. We have 4 outside fields and an indoor there. And then we don't have any other facilities, but we do have baseball teams in Southern California and Colorado.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go right here or there.
So I'm a big Chelsea fan, by the way, so it's not going too good.
I won't hold it against you too much.
What kind of tournaments do you guys run soccer-wise? Are they more like college showcase or?
We do both.
Okay.
So we do events. In fact, this past weekend we had a 150 team event in New Jersey and an 80 team event in Pennsylvania. And they were kind of, I would say, catered to the travel level. I wouldn't say elite level clubs, but travel level clubs. And then we do run a selection of baseball and soccer showcases, which include an ID on a Friday night. And we do have an extensive network of college coaches in both sports. And obviously on the professional side, on the baseball, we're affiliated with some obviously big people like Dusty Baker and Bobby Valentine and others. Keith Ozick, who was a 10-year major, played with the Pittsburgh Pirates, is in charge of our baseball curriculum. So yeah, we run multiple levels of tournament. Same as on the baseball side, we run kind of travel tournaments, but we also are the owner of the National Youth Baseball Championships, which is kind of a poor man's little league, should we say, Little League World Series. So we have teams from all over the country that come to the park as well.
Lee, you had a question?
What kind of expansion do you hope to see for Steel Sports or for youth sports in general?
So what we've coined as our rule of 5. We want to be in 5 core sports in 15 states in 5 years. So we are looking at adding at least 2 more core sports. We are looking currently at lacrosse, basketball, volleyball, and field hockey as potential sports. In terms of new states, we were hoping to add 5 new states. We haven't labeled those yet. But we expect and hope to do that within the next 5 years. So we definitely have seen an expansion. Our teams have increased by about 28% year over year in the last 2 years, and our number of tournament participants has also increased quite dramatically. So we definitely are growing, but we only grow as fast as the quality of people that we have. We are a service company, right? So we're only there for as good as the people that we have working for us that believe in the same things that we do.
Show of hands again. Who's applying or who has applied for an internship? What's your name? What did you apply for?
Zach and I plan on applying.
Plan on applying.
Yeah, plan on
okay, and
applying,
what
yeah.
position?
Looking at either communications or coaching.
Coaching. Okay, so when someone someone from college comes and applies for a communication or coaching, what are you looking for?
We're looking for, as I said, really, we're looking for, are they a good fit? Are they hardworking? Are they willing to be a good listener? Are they willing to come in and say, you know what, I might have read a lot of stuff, but I don't know everything and I want to learn. Internships are a great opportunity to learn, as I said, as I mentioned to your question, learn real world ways. And I think if you come in with an open mind, an ability to want to learn, an ability to work hard, you can be very successful and take from it. But what I will also say is that we offer an internship program, which I'm a little biased, I think is excellent. But you're only going to get what you put into it. I think that's true in a lot of things in life. So if you are going to put hard work, you're going to want to learn. You're going to ask questions. That's a big thing. Ask questions. Ask these people. That you would potentially work with in any field are most likely they're experts in that field. They've been doing it for a long period of time. Ask them questions. Ask them why. Why are they doing it like that? And there's nothing wrong with asking why. Maybe they've been set in their ways and they need to be shown new ways of doing things. We pride ourselves on having a growth mindset, which is Angela's coined term. But you've got to be willing to be able to say that I don't know it all, and I can get better. And that's one of the things that makes our coaching system so good, is that we deal with coaches that say, yeah, I want the feedback, and if it's critical, that's fine. I can get better from that. I'm not going to say if I get some criticism and I'm told I can do things better, or I'm shown I can do things better this way, I want to take that on board so that I can get better. If you come in thinking, and you hear criticism from people and you shut down and you shut off from that, then you're never going to get any better as you go through life. So one of the big things I would tell people is, have a growth mindset and learn, ask why, ask questions. And if you get criticism, take it on board and learn from it. And I think it makes you much, much better future employee if you've had that experience.
Jacob Kaplan, you interned for Steel Sports, right?
Yeah.
Tell everybody what your experience was like.
So the first thing you're gonna notice pretty much is the passion that everyone working there has. It's not just like these people aren't just going to the office, working 9 to 5, collecting a paycheck, and then going home to their families. Like everyone there is so committed to not only their jobs but like their mission statements of Steel. When they say they're really a social impact company, they are. And again, it all starts from the top level leadership. If you intern with them, Jonesy will talk to you very early on, and he's just a perfect example of everything that's really good about Steel. And if you aren't bought into what they're doing by like the start, he'll definitely get you bought in. But I was there from during summer and then this past fall doing stuff in social media, and it's a lot of fun. There's a really they let you actually do stuff. Like it's not just like doing internship work. Like you'll actually go out and be of service and learn how to do things. I really did. I stayed with them even while doing other stuff, you know, during the school years. I really did like everything that was going on. Again, it's a true like social impact on things. That's the biggest thing.
There you go. How about that, huh?
That's I couldn't have said it better myself.
You like that, huh?
Yeah.
He's throwing Jonesy's name out
I
there.
know,
Huh? How
yeah.
about that?
Hey, anyone can't get fired up by Steve Jones and Scott Rollins if you get a chance. To
We have a couple more minutes. Questions for? Go ahead, Mo.
Yeah,
U.S. Mexico.
yeah.
The U.S. will win.
Even with everyone injured.
Yeah, they'll win. They'll still win. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Any other questions for Martin? Anybody? All right. So I'm just going to go back here to the view. Stay right there. You're fine. Martin, just again, students, we're telling them to contact Leslie Teal. How many interns do you take in the course of the summer? How many do you take? Do you know?
I think we're looking at this year to take somewhere around 15. I think.
Okay, and that's in the Philly, New York,
In
or
the
Philly, New Jersey.
yeah, tri-state area, yes.
So, that's look for the students again who were able to do it last year. They really enjoyed it. Let's thank Martin Brown for being here with us. Next week we've got Joe DeCamera, talk show host for WYP, co-host middays. He's been with John Ritchie, the former NFL fullback, since 2016, and he's had long experience here working on radio. So we haven't had a radio person, I don't think, this year. So Joe is going to be with us next Monday at 6 o'clock. Thanks for being here. If you didn't, by the way, did everybody hit the QR code? If you didn't hit the QR code, just make sure you come up here so I know that everyone's here. We'll see you guys next week, and thank you again, Martin, for coming. Thank you very much.